This video will discuss the labor productivity and multi-factor productivity measurements using the example of problem 1.8 from the textbook. The company in this example cleaned 65 rugs in October, consuming 3 resources: labor, measured in hours, solvent, measured in gallons, and machine rental, measured in days. The information on the units of each resource used and the cost of each of these units is given in the template. To calculate labor productivity, we need to decide whether we want to measure the labor productivity in units of output per hour or units of output per input dollar. And we'll do both in this case. In fact, here we'll calculate input dollars for each of the resources in this example. The input dollars for labor is the hours of labor used times the cost per hour. The input dollars for solvent is the gallons used times the cost per gallon. And the same formula can be used to calculate the input dollars for machine rental. We'll go ahead and calculate the total of all input dollars. It's the sum of the input dollars for each of the 3 resources. Now we'll calculate our first productivity measurement. Although the problem just calculates for a labor productivity measurement, there's no reason we can't calculate a productivity measurement in units of output per units of the resource for each of these. This measurement would simply be the units produced, which in this case is the carpets. And after I entered a cell reference to the units produced, I put dollar signs in front of both the column and the row so that I could copy this formula down the spreadsheet, and that reference would remain the same. I'll divide this by the units for each of the resource inputs. And I'll copy this formula down to each of the 3 resources, and that will give us our 3 productivity measurements. So labor productivity is 0.125 rugs for every labor hour. We can also measure productivity in units of output per input dollar. The formula would be mostly the same, except we would divide the output in rugs by the input dollars for each resource. The first calculation will give us the labor productivity, but we could do a similar calculation for the other resources. Since I want to copy this formula in cell F5 down to F6 and F7, one shortcut to do that is to highlight the first cell, expand the selection, and then hit Control D on the keyboard. So we see that our labor productivity in units of output per input dollar is 0.0096 rugs per input dollar. Now we can calculate multi-factor productivity. The thing that will simplify this calculation here is that the input dollars have already been calculated for each of the resources. So we just need to take advantage of that calculation. Recall that the input dollars, for instance, for labor, were the units of labor or hours times the cost per unit. And a similar calculation was made for each of the resources, and then this was summed up here in cell D8. So the multi-factor productivity would be the units of output divided by the total input dollars. The company may have a target that they have for their productivity, or they may be able to compare this to a benchmark in the industry, or compare it to their prior performance. In all of these ways, they're able to have a measurement to help them determine how efficiently they are producing their outputs from their inputs. And operations management is the management and the decisions associated with the processes used to use inputs and produce outputs.